Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hopes for School podcast, where we amplify student voice and share ideas for educational transformation. I am so excited today to be speaking with one of the contributors to our book and former student of mine and dear friend and colleague, Robert Cannone. Welcome, Robert.
Hey, Jen, thank you so much for having me on.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for contributing to the book and for taking the time to be here. For people who don't know you, I'd love for you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, hi, everyone. My name is Robert Cannone. I am a very proud brother, uncle, friend, educator, lifelong student. Currently, I'm a program consultant with the York Catholic District School Board. So essentially, in my role, I support teachers in K-8, sometimes K-12, with the sharing of instructional practices related to curriculum and assessment. And I love my job, and I'm so glad that I was able to not only learn from you, but also in the capacity as a student, but also as a colleague not too long ago.
Okay, I love that. Except, let's be completely transparent here. In the book, I talk about how I wish I could go back and apologize to students for when I wasn't a great teacher. I feel like that whole St. Joan of Arc crew, including you, might be some of the people I need to apologize to. And I'm trying to think, Rob, when did our paths cross again? I think it was maybe when I was the literacy consultant at the
Correct.
board.
Yeah, and when you were rolling out alongside other consultants a tech initiative in the board, and that's when we talked about the power of social media, using apps. We looked at the SAMR model, and I was like so inspired by everything you had to share, and I went full throttle with all the strategies and ideas that you had offered.
And I remember being so inspired by how student-centered your classroom was. And I remember I had the opportunity in that job to be able to go into your classroom sometimes to see some of the things that you were doing. And I, in particular, remember the one beautiful experience with your students and a young girl, Monica Sitnick, who was diagnosed with cancer, and how your grade 6 students rallied around her. You had, if you remind me, a bake sale.
Bake
You were able
sales.
to.
We students made social media posts about what Monica was going through. We raised awareness about what she was experiencing, as well as we spread awareness about the bake sale in the community. And then all the funds that were raised, we put towards with another school that was also participating and doing the same thing. I think in grade 3 students, we pooled our funds that we had raised, and we put them towards a bike for Monica and a quilt. So students really rallied together, all for good for Monica, and we made a difference in her life and her family's, hopefully.
Absolutely. You made a difference in mine. And the video they put together was just so, makes me cry every time I see it. You have been innovating since I'm over a decade. So I'd love to hear a little, and you also contributed to the book about one of the instrumental things that you were doing in your classroom to amplify student voice. So your particular idea, Spotlight, is in chapter 6, which is student voice, choice, and agency. Can you tell us a little bit about your contribution to the book?
Definitely. And please, I want to thank you to start for that opportunity to share this idea with your readers. So in my grade 6 classroom, I noticed that my students were very eager to help. And they wanted to help with everything from tidying up the bookshelf area to hanging material and their student work on the walls. And I appreciated all that, and I allowed them to do that. But I realized, how can I really harness this spirit of volunteerism to have them do something even more meaningful? And I thought, you know what, why don't they help me with things that I do that really could be student controlled, where they can, take control of it, take ownership of it. So I relinquished my control and management of things like managing the classroom blog that we had, the classroom social media account. I was monitoring it, but they would send me posts and write-ups and blog posts. So I assembled different committees, one being the blog and social media team. Another group was the health and wellness team, and they were responsible for coming up with innovative ways to energize their peers through daily physical activity, while also sharing once a week short presentations, usually on a Friday, about how to handle stress and motivate yourself. There was another group responsible for setting up the prayer table, which was again, something that I would do. And I oversaw the development side. I'd meet with them often to get an idea of where they wanted to go with all these creative little pursuits. But ultimately, it was each of these groups that ran these committees to do something meaningful that was authentically their own. And as they looked around the classroom space, as they saw things online, they were able to tell their parents and their peers that was their own. And this was ultimately their classroom. So they loved those volunteer opportunities. And I did too, because, it was authentically done by them.
I love that. I remember your students presenting at one of our ed camps, and I remember talking to them about how they felt about the committees that you created in your classroom. And in their presentation, they talked about them being an integral piece of a big puzzle. And I thought, what a beautiful analogy, that they felt so connected to one another. They felt like they really had a say, that one puzzle piece would be missing if they weren't a part of that. So just wanted to shut that out. There were a couple of things that you said that really resonate. So number one is relinquishing that control. I think that's the biggest piece, isn't it? That we often will talk about, amplifying student voice, but ultimately as like, we're the teacher in control, but there are so many things that we could take a back seat on and allow them to flourish and thrive. So I loved that. I also love, so I, in my role as a faculty advisor now at the Faculty of Education, I've had the opportunity to go into different classrooms. And there was a classroom, it's a grade 6 classroom, actually, similar to yours. And they had like classroom jobs. And so it was like cleaning up and, all the things. But I think what was so different about yours, I mean, classroom jobs are great because, again, students take ownership. But what I loved about your committees was that it was one step beyond a job, right? It was mental health and well-being. It was blogs. It was really lead opportunities for your kids to shine and lead.
Yeah. And to add to that, they were also developing these transferable skills in the process, right? Through creating a blog, digital literacy, through coming up with what they'd want on the prayer table, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, and problem solving. So quite indirectly, they were, developing those skills with me guiding them. And hopefully maybe one day they'll see themselves in those very roles, if you will, in the future.
Yes, I love that. And one of the chapters is making school more practical. And we always think like that has to be this crazy thing. But what you did was a simple way to ensure that they are building the skills that they will need that will transfer. So love. In your role now as a consultant, you get to do what I did, right? You get to go into different classes and you get to prepare professional learning for a variety of different teachers in our district. Tell me, if you can, one or two examples of what you would say school done right looks like. So we know we have so many parameters put upon us, but are there any instances you can share where you are like, that is wonderful, everyone should do this?
Yeah, like you said, I have the opportunity to go into many classrooms and witness the incredible work that educators are doing across the district. But I also see work that's done online because I have a pulse on, what other teachers are doing around Ontario. But for this specific one, it was a class in Richmond Hill that I was visited in November. And just the culture of collaboration, curiosity, it was palpable. So it was a grade 4 classroom in Richmond Hill, and students were deeply engaged in solving real world problems through a math lesson on measurement. And the teacher had presented a task to them about creating a board game whereby they'd have to, it was a marble maze board game, and they would have to measure and build the parts with either cardboard or wood. And in the process, they were collaborating with their peers and groups. They also had to, another component of it was they had to present this and market this game as a product. So it was just a rich interdisciplinary task that integrated, math, language, the arts, financial literacy. But what I loved most about this was that day that I was in the classroom for it, the teacher welcomed a colleague in the school to sit on her prep period, which she had chosen to do voluntarily. She wasn't being evaluated or anything, and she was just there to learn, to witness how our colleagues set up and facilitated that engaging task. And I loved that. It reflected a school culture where professional learning was shared, and where with the students, curiosity was nurtured and modeled by educators. And going back to that whole idea of relinquishing responsibility, as was demonstrated through those classroom committees, I've seen many schools or classrooms do this. And if I go back into the classroom, which I'm so excited about that possibility one day, I would do this. And it was so brilliant, where you start the beginning of the school year, and rather than going in and stressing yourselves out in August, determining what borders to buy, what backdrop to have, some teachers are having students create their classroom space for themselves, how they envision it. What borders would you like? What would you like on this wall? What do you think we should put here, given the work and learning that we're going to be doing? And in a different context, in maybe secondary schools, that might look different, like, creating a syllabus together. Obviously, with as a teacher, you have in mind the expectations and goals for the year, but I can't wait to share that idea in September with teachers, because I would want to do that myself, where again, you're relinquishing that control and you're giving students voice and how their learning space is set up, and perhaps the tasks related to the year.
I love both of those examples. So the math example, grade 4, I mean, we often think, because I have most of my experience in the high school, like a high school class could handle that, but clearly so can a grade 4 class. So, and I often wonder, like, would math have been more meaningful to me if I saw math in the real world? Like, how many times have I heard a student say, but where would I ever use this? You know what I mean? And you can. I remember working with Connie Quadrini at the board. I don't know if you remember her in the numeracy. And when she was looking at parabolas, I remember her lesson on going to see the McDonald's arches. Those are parabolas, and doing right. And I'm like, I had no idea, because we don't often make that link for kids. So I love that. And then you sharing the idea about the kids sort of having control over the physical space, that has been something that I have thought about all the time. I think I even talk about it in the book. And so when I was in the Library Learning Commons, it was in really bad shape. It wasn't renovated since the 1980s. And so I went in there, and every year I said, could we renovate the space? And they're like, well, yeah, maybe. But then we had like this ongoing number of like every year there was a new principal, and every year I pitched it again. And then finally, Miss Bartolini, who's there now, said, sure, no problem. So one of the things that was super important to me from the beginning and onwards is that kids should see themselves in the spaces. So any of the posters that we created, we had a Lego table that was created by the students in our technology department. We have a beautiful welcome wall now in the library that, again, was created in collaboration with student council, who found out what all the cultures of the school, all the different cultures and languages within the school. And then our arts council, who pitched different design ideas to us, and then created this beautiful welcome wall in the library. And the renovation itself, I got together with another class, with the interior design class, and that was their project. They had to create for their CPT what the library would look like. They had to do surveys, and they had to go and price out what furniture they would like and how much it would cost. And then we took those designs, and that's actually why our library looks the way it does. So I think every class could do that, right? Like, that was a bit of a big scale, but like you said, having kids make it their own, how powerful is that?
Yeah. And then, again, seeing that they created and contributed to that vision is so meaningful,
So meaningful. Thank you for sharing that. So I'm asking this question of everyone. The book is called Hopes for School, and they really reflect Karen's hopes, which I'm so sorry she can't be here. She's got a really busy schedule. She's in university. But how would you answer that question? What are your own hopes for school?
I think teachers are doing a phenomenal job right now at making schools very, welcoming, nurturing environments where students see themselves represented, their identities and interests honored. I just think there's one thing that when we talk about hopes for school, I hope that schools continue to become a space where students aren't so much consumed by grades. And I don't know if we're going in the wrong direction here, but that's one thing that I think we overlook when we put a lot of emphasis on instruction, but we don't look at how so many students from as young as grade 1 into secondary see grades as defining themselves as learners. And I want schools to become places where we rethink the ways in which we assess. We, again, foster an environment in classrooms where we can tell students that taking risks is welcome. That I used to have in my classroom at the very front, it was the most meaningful message. It was mistakes are expected, respected, inspected, and corrected. And it was more than just a catchy line. It was a guiding principle in my classroom and a philosophy that students always were reminded of, because, with that in front of them every day, they knew that they can raise their hand and say something. And whether it was right or deemed wrong, it was something that was contributing to the learning of all, and including my own as an educator. So I think we have to rethink that, because that would allow students to just be more vulnerable with how they approach tasks and learning. It would also help us as educators to shape the way that we interact with students with more compassion and sensitivity about, that grades aren't really everything. And so I hope that schools can become places where risk-taking is celebrated, not penalized, where curiosity becomes the driving force, not compliance. Also, in seeing my nephews and niece on social media often, I hope that schools can become places where there's a lot of creating, less consuming, not just to complete a task, but to understand the moving parts behind why they're doing something, whether it's creating a podcast, a computer game. So I have a lot of hopes for school, but those seem to be the most pressing ones, as they seem to be ones that really I see often in schools, that we have a lot of areas to improve on in those specific topics mentioned.
I can't wait for you to read the book, because there's a whole chapter on grades, because Karen feels the same way you do, to be honest with you. And she really felt that her grades and making mistakes really held her back from being her true self and from really learning. So I'm going to invite you, say that poster again. I'm going to invite you. We're going to add it to the show notes, and then we have resources that are going to be crowdsourced on the Padlet. I'd love to be able to add to the resources again. Say it one more time.
Mistakes are expected, respected, inspected, and corrected.
Beautiful.
Yes, yeah.
I love that. I wish I had that when we were writing the book, but it's okay. We'll have it now.
Add it somewhere.
Beautiful. All right. And then we like to end, because I need an ongoing list of books to read. What are you currently reading? It doesn't have to be educational. And what are you currently watching? Again, doesn't have to be educational, but if it is, that's fine too.
No problem. So I'm currently reading, it's a book from a restaurateur and chef, Will Guidara. It's called Unreasonable Hospitality. So great story here. He attended a top 50 restaurant celebration, World's Best Restaurant Awards. And this restaurant in particular received 50 out of top 50 and not number 1. So despite that accomplishment, he felt like an outsider, and he realized that, we have to do something different to really excel. And so that's why he came up with this idea and this term, unreasonable hospitality. So he, with his staff and with the restaurants that he had, he decided to transform the customer service experience to make it truly individualized and responsive to his clientele. So I'm reading it, and I know you said not educational, Jen, but whenever I read a book, I always make connections to education. Do you do that?
You can't help yourself. I'm the same.
I'm like, how can we unreasonable education, like unreasonable, serving and education. So I'm like, how can we go above and beyond for our students? And my capacity as well, the teachers that I have the privilege of serving. So I'm like, and I'm learning some ideas here, and it all relates to education in that he's responsive. He listens, he's responsive, he pays attention to little details. Anyway, I know you said not to take the education.
It's fine. I'm putting it on my to read list right now because I think Stuart, a former chef, my husband Stuart, Stuart,
yes,
will really, as a former chef, also appreciate it. And we're looking for a book to listen to together. So
there you go. Awesome. That's a good one.
And then what are you watching?
Oh, okay. What I'm watching, it's called The Seat. It's a documentary about Formula One driver Kimi Antonelli, and he's very young. Okay, you have to watch it. It's super short. I know you might think I'm going to talk about a series, but I feel like I don't have the attention span to watch a series. So I saw this documentary on Netflix. It was 40 minutes. I'm like, boom, I'm going to watch it. And I loved it because these, Mercedes, they saw so much potential in this very young driver early on. And they're like, well, he has promise, he has potential. How are we going to nurture that? How are we going to coach it? And how are we going to build the right conditions so that he can succeed? And slowly you see his development and him winning races, but him starting, from a place of mistake and error and being an amateur. It's again, making connections to education, very cheesy, but I loved it. And at first you thought yourself as a viewer, you're like, I don't think this guy's going to make it. Like he's very amateur, and now I'm rooting for him, like the underdog, the young guy, the 18-year-old from Italy who hopefully will continue to do well in F1. So that's it. That's what I'm reading, and that's what I'm watching.
I love both those suggestions, and I love how you can't help but be a teacher. You are the consummate educator who always puts kids first, and I'm just so proud and honored to know you and be your friend. Thank you for taking the time to be here today. Thank you for your contribution to the book. Our paths will cross as always. But if you don't know Rob, can you tell them how to find you online?
Yes, certainly. My handle on X and on Instagram is at Mr_Rob Cannone.
Awesome. Thank you again for being here.
Thanks for having me.